There were a few times in which Saint John Bosco had visions of devils. These experiences were sent from above that he might learn how the devil tries to take us to hell. This particular dream is called The Devil in the Playground. The Miracles and Prophecies of Saint John Bosco, a project of America Needs Fatima. I'm your host, Matthew Miller. Don Bosco spent 2 months at Varese during a very serious illness from December 1871 to January 1872. During this time, he received several dreams or visions about his oratory boys. One night, after his return to the oratory at the beginning of March, Don Bosco narrated one of these dreams to his pupils, and Father Berto wrote a summary of it. But before we begin, I'd just like to remind you that all of these videos are ad-free, and if you'd like to keep them that way and support this channel, you can become a promoter of Saint John Bosco by clicking on the link in the description below, or by waiting till the end of the video and clicking on the logo that should appear on the screen. Help me spread Don Bosco's message far and wide. The saint's account of his vision began, after I told some people that I had had a dream, others kept asking me about it, both in person and by mail. Hence, I'll tell you about it, but just for the sake of conversation, because dreams come when one is asleep, and we are not to overvalue them. Throughout my illness, you were always in my mind. Always, day and night, I talked about you, because my heart was constantly with you. Even when asleep, therefore, I dreamed about you and the oratory. I paid you several visits, and consequently I can talk about your concerns even more knowingly than you perhaps can yourselves. Of course, I didn't come bodily, or you would have seen me. One night, no sooner had I fallen asleep than I immediately found myself in your midst. I came out of our old church of St. Francis de Sales and immediately spotted an individual in the corner of the playground adjacent to the portico leading to the visitors' lounge. This man was holding a writing tablet, which listed all your names. He looked at me and immediately jotted something down. Then he moved successively to the corner near the old classrooms and to the bottom of the staircase leading up to my room, and in no time roamed through the whole playground, checking things and taking notes. Curious to know who he was and what he was writing, I tailed him, but he moved so fast I soon had to trot to keep up with him. He also went through the artisans' playground, checking and taking notes with astonishing speed. Anxious to find out what he was writing, I drew closer. Each line bore the name of a boy, beside which he would jot down something. While he gazed off here and there, I quickly flipped some pages and saw that some names had on the opposite page pictures of animals, symbolizing the sins of those boys. Opposite one boy's name was the picture of a swine with the inscription Comparatus est lumentis incipientibus, et similis factus est illis. He has been compared to senseless beasts and made like to them, as it says in the book of Psalms. Other names were marked on the facing page with a forked tongue and a legend in Latin. Translated, it read, "Whisperers, detractors are worthy of death, and not only they that do such things, but they also that consent to them that do them." Romans. I saw also pictures of donkey ears, symbolizing evil talk with the words corrumpunt bonos mores colloquia prava. Evil companionships corrupt good morals. Corinthians. Others had an owl or some other animal beside their names. I turned the pages very quickly and noticed that some names had not been written in ink and so were hardly legible. At this point, I took a close look at that individual and noticed that he had 2 reddish long ears. His face was as red as fire, and his eyes seemed to flash with blood-red fiery sparks. "Now I know who you are," I said to myself. Then he walked around the playground 2 or 3 more times, checking and taking notes. While he was busy with all that, the bell rang for church. I headed toward it, and immediately he followed me, stationing himself near the door, watching you as you passed through. He too went inside then, and stood just in front of the altar rail gate to keep an eye on you throughout the whole Mass. I didn't want to miss anything, and so, noticing that the sanctuary door was slightly ajar, I stood there watching him. Father Cibrario was celebrating Mass. At the elevation, The boys recited the versicle, "Blessed and praised every moment be the most holy and divine sacrament." At that precise second, I heard a resounding roar, as if the church were caving in. Both the stranger and his writing tablet vanished in smoke, leaving but a handful of ashes. I thanked God for having thus overcome and driven the demon out of his house. I also realized that attending Holy Mass destroys all devilish gains, and that the moment of the elevation is especially terrifying for him. After Mass, I walked out, convinced that I had gotten rid of that individual, but instead, there he was, just outside the door, huddled up, leaning with his back against the corner of the church. He wore a tattered red cap, through which 2 long horns protruded from his head. "Ah, you're still here, you hideous beast," I shouted. My cries startled poor Enria, who was standing nearby, half dozing. At that same moment, I awoke. This is my dream, and even though it was nothing more than a dream, I still learned something which had never before dawned on me. It's this. The devil, not content with keeping a record of the evil he sees being done because the Lord wouldn't believe him on Judgment Day, uses the very words of Holy Scripture and of God's commandments to condemn the guilty ones. Thus he inflicts also the sentence. Many of you might like to know whether I saw something about you in that tablet and whether your names were clearly legible. I can't talk about that now, but I'll tell those who are interested privately. I saw many other things in this dream. At times, that individual hurled angry words at me and at someone who was with me, but since it would take too long, I'll tell you a little bit at a time. I have many things to tell you about the past and present, but since so many of you keep asking me about that dream, I'll go into some detail, but briefly, lest it take too long. I was asked whether I saw anything else after the writing tablet turned into ashes. Yes, as soon as it vanished with that ugly rascal, a cloud of sorts arose, and in its midst was a flag or banner bearing the inscription, "Grace Obtained." I saw other things too, which I didn't want to tell you, lest you become swell-headed. But since you're all so good and virtuous, don't take me too seriously on that, I'll let you in on a little secret. I saw that during my absence, you kept yourselves in God's grace. I can assure you that you have obtained many spiritual favors, including my recovery, for which you prayed so much. But this isn't all. While I and someone else kept tailing that hideous monster, watching his every move, I was able to see that all your names were written in that tablet. Some pages had only 2 or 3 names, followed by these dates: 1872, 1873, 74, 75, and 76. Each date was followed by these words, Requiem Aeternam, eternal rest. On another page, I again saw those words, but no names. I saw only as far as 1876, and counted Requiem Aeternam 22 times, 6 referring exclusively to 1872. And just a side note from me, all of these deaths came to pass, and the proof of this prophecy was used in Saint John Bosco's canonization process. He continued, "In trying to understand this, because you know that dreams must be interpreted, I came to the conclusion that by 1876, we shall have to sing Requiem Aeternam 22 times. I was hesitant about this interpretation. All of you being so healthy and strong, it seemed odd to me that so many should die by that year, and yet I could draw no other conclusion. Let us hope that what follows, i.e., et lux perpetua luceat eis, and let perpetual light shine upon them, may also come true, and that we may be able to say that such light indeed shines before our eyes. Now I do not wish, nor is it proper to disclose how many had the Requiem Aeternam beside their names, or who they were. Let us leave this among God's inscrutable secrets. Let us just strive to keep in God's grace so that, when our day comes, we may tranquilly present ourselves to our divine Judge. Life is God's gift. By keeping us alive, He's constantly bestowing a gift on us. On my part, since I regained my health through your prayers, Even though I wasn't too keen about recovering, I shall always strive to spend it in God's service and for your spiritual welfare, so that someday we may all enjoy God, who showers us so lavishly with benefits in this vale of tears." So ended Don Bosco's extraordinary account. Thank you all so much for watching. God bless you, and Our Lady keep you.